This is the Mighty Oba, Pat Freeman, Sports Director for 1080 AM WFO Radio and CLB TV with our weekly sports update. We will continue our update of the NFL Draft and what possible direction the Buffalo Bills will go into with this draft. I think the Buffalo Bills have so many areas. We're going to take a little bit of look at the linebacking area in this draft. Of course, you know there are two prospects that I think in the inside line. When you've got a 3-4 defense, your inside linebackers have to be stout. Right now, we're probably going to come back with Kavika Mitchell and Paul Posluszny. But backups and potential starters are people you're looking at in the draft. I think the Buffalo Bills need to be looking at Rolando McClain and Brandon Spikes. Unfortunately, I don't know if these guys are going to be there when the Buffalo Bills get to the point that they need linebackers in this draft. So then you got to look at an Eric Norwood, a Sean Lee from Penn State, Donald Butler from Washington, Daryl Sharpton from Miami, and Boris Lee from Troy. You know they have a good look at Troy because they've taken Leotis McElvin in years past under Tom Modrak. Also, too, I'm telling you, our outside linebackers, you've got to have strong outside linebackers in a 3-4 defense. You're going to be looking at Sergio Kendall from Texas, Sean Weatherspoon from Missouri, Daryl Washington from Texas Christian University, Navarro Bowman from Penn State. We always see him on the Modrak to like these Penn State guys. One, Aaron Maven, Paul Posluszny. You know they've taken a look at these guys. These could be areas that the Buffalo Bills will be looking at in this particular draft. But linebackers, there is a lot of talent. One of the steals I think in this draft might be Thaddeus Gibson out of Ohio State, A.J. Edds out of Iowa, because you know they're looking very hard at Brian Bulaga out of Iowa. I think they're also going to look at A.J. Edds, another linebacker out of Iowa. These are players that I think the Buffalo Bills are going to look at in the later rounds of the draft. Unfortunately, the top linebackers, such as Rolando McClain and Brandon Spikes, when I think the Buffalo Bills will be in a position to draft these types of players, I don't think they're going to be on the board. So you're going to have to look at other players from other schools that you think will be available in the later rounds. I'm talking 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. In those rounds and possible free agents, you're going to have to look at some of these other linebackers. Akoi Misi out of Utah, Rennie Curran out of Georgia, Roderick McElroy out of Texas. These are players you're going to have to take a look at in the later rounds of the draft. The top linebackers in the draft, I do not think are necessarily going to be there for the Buffalo Bills unless they change their mind and say, hey, I'm just going to go for a guy like this, and I don't think that can happen. With so many holes on this team, I think you first have to go with your offensive line and your defensive lines, and then you start addressing the problem of depth at linebacker. Right now, I think those names that I mentioned, the Sergio Kendalls, the Sean Weatherspoons, those are the names that you're going to have to look at in the later rounds of this draft as possible fits in your 3-4 defense and possibly might be available in this particular draft. We're going to look at some defensive backs on next week, even though that is the strength of the Buffalo Bills team. But John Butler told us many times over, you never have enough defensive backs. You can always use defensive backs no matter what. So you always see teams adding 1 or 2 defensive backs in draft or free agency no matter what, because you never have enough. Hey, I'm Pat Freeman, the Mighty Oba, as we count down to the NFL Draft. This is our preview. I think the Buffalo Bills are in a great position in this draft to get some great talent. They have not done very well in free agency. Not impressed with anything the Buffalo Bills have addressed in free agency, even though free agency is very, very thin this year. You don't have the free agent pool that you used to have because this is an uncapped year with different rules that have affected a lot of NFL players. This is the Mighty Oba. We'll see you next week right here on the CLB TV 1080 AM WFO Radio Sports Update. We will see you next week.